Okay, this is the 4-year anniversary of this cabin when it was built, and it's more of a study on structure building in the wilderness. So this cabin is built far enough away from society that a vehicle could not get to it. You couldn't bring a lot of equipment in for this sort of thing. So I brought in a chainsaw and a froe and draw knife and hammers and that sort of thing, but that was about it. So this here is just an evaluation of how this cabin fared after 4 years, just to see if there's anything that I could improve upon. But the structure was originally designed to be as simplistic and affordable as possible, because obviously if it's up in the wilderness, can't bring a lot of gear in and material and whatnot. So I left the bark on the trees because it was quick, and I was wondering how that would do. As well, I used mud, dirt mixed with a little bit of organic material to create the caulking in between the logs, and we'll just see how all that turned out. The notching system also is unique. It's not really a hack notch as I thought. I don't know what it is, because it's don't actually see it anywhere in any of the books that I was looking through in log building construction. But this is my first cabin, so the design is more my own than anything else, based on simplicity. But you can see the notch basically takes where are we here? Where's my hand? Right there. The notch basically takes a piece from each log to equal a middle point where they both fit together, and it's done all the way up. It took 5 trees to build this, and I believe they're hemlock. You could correct me if you know otherwise. It could be a fir, but I wasn't really looking at the tree when I was cutting it down all that carefully. I just know it's not cedar. Anyhow, what do we see here? Is this backed up? Yeah, it is. This piece right here, I don't know where this went. I don't see it anywhere on the ground. So I don't know if somebody came visiting and maybe pulled it off for firewood. Don't know. But it took me about 100 hours to build this, including the concrete fireplace that's inside there. And that probably was 20-25 of the hours. But most of the time was actually spent trying to figure out how to make a tree fall in a forest like this. As you can see, the trees are fairly crowded, and you get the effect if you're trying to selectively log trees out. You get the effect that they will not fall. You can saw them, but they won't fall out of the canopy. So with that in mind, I actually spent maybe half the time trying to figure out how to get the tree to fall down so I could limb it and chop it into sections. So most of the time was really fiddling around with that sort of thing. Here's a ladder I built to get on the roof and do my construction. And again, it was my first cabin. I wasn't impressed after looking at it with some of the design things I'd done. Like, for instance, the roof is meant to protect everything. And there's a hole right there. Not that it's a bad one, but right here you can see where these runners actually are being rained on, and the shingles were supposed to protect them. So the roof is meant to protect the cabin from everything. So the roof is good this way. Obviously there's 8 inches of space between the cabin and the shingle, so there's lots of room for wind to try and blow the rain up against the cabin, which it shouldn't be able to do. But yeah, obviously these runners will get fungus on them eventually and start to rot if I don't deal with that and chop them back to where they should be. Here again, I did build this cabin on 4 main rock points, and just to keep the whole thing off the ground so it won't rot. And there's a slight crack underneath there of maybe 1 inch here and 6 inches there. But then again, It's trying to slow down Mother Nature from doing its job. The roof actually did really well. It had 6 feet of snow at one point, but we get a lot of rain in this forest. So maybe 150, 200 days a year of rain that will cause mold and fungus to grow. You can see some right here. But yeah, in general, my construction strategy was to keep the outside flush as I built it. You can't really see with the ladder in the way, but on the inside, the difference would be the log variation would be shown on the inside, whereas flush on the outside. My own building strategy. With this style of notching, I spike maybe a 4-inch spike between each log as I build it up, just to keep them stable as I go up. I think it's essential because somebody could hit it really hard and bash the whole thing apart if you didn't. But mold and fungus is the biggest problem with these cabins. I caulked only on the inside because I felt that moisture and dampness and rain hitting maybe a leaf or something, and then hitting the caulking would eventually cause it to flake away. So on the inside it's more protected and has better chance of lasting. So this is 4 years worth of wear. We'll see what everything looks like. First of all, is there much, yeah, there's not a lot of checking. A little bit of checking on these logs, but not a lot. There's no shrinkage marks that I see, but you can see better on the inside. So we just open this up. Let's see what we find here. Okay, so the mud caulking, it did alright for 4 years. There is gaps in the mud now. You can see it in some places, like right about there. If you hit it just right, there's an 1/8 of an inch at worst in some places. And other places, there's not hardly any. But yeah, it is definitely time to re-caulk if you like to keep it tight. But then again, I think, what do I see here? Mold. Up at the top there, where most dampness would finally settle, you can see where that one beam, the ridge beam, whatever, took some mold, fungus. And I would think that's because of the lack of maybe airflow, but then again, I've got nice big gaps in between the roof and well, the window right here, which is poly, thick poly. And I think I would probably have had a choice, since I wasn't actually living in here. I would have taken the poly off the windows and left lots of airflow for the first year to allow everything to dry out that much faster without getting mold and fungus growth. This cabin also saw a bear run through it. He climbed over the top through here and back out through this window here. You see some of his claw marks right there. But yeah, he had ripped holes through the windows on his little trip. I don't know if he hibernated here or not, but what else can I tell you? The floor. Okay, yeah, okay, so it's big enough obviously for a hammock and a heater, stove, as well as shelving and some wood supply there, and a little chair. The design was 8 feet by 8 feet, which of course allows for a perfect fit for a 6.5 foot hammock by 6.5 by 3 feet maybe, I don't know. This right here, stove, originally I built it and it didn't have enough airflow. I added this and it's only about 1.5 inches wide. I probably should have made it 2.5 inches or something like that for even more airflow, so I could keep the lid closed while it's burning. But what I find I do is, to light it, I have to leave this top partially open for airflow to get the heat running properly. But it's basically 4 big patio stones, I guess 20-inch patio stones, and with fire brick surrounding the middle inside there that I just tucked in to take up the heat. But the idea was to keep the whole thing where it would get really hot with a quick fire and gradually radiate the heat throughout the rest of the night, so you don't have to constantly light a fire and have it cool down on you. And that's why it's in close proximity to the bed. Well, couldn't really avoid it because it's a small cabin, but it would actually be nice and warm right in that area. Yeah, these travel to the bottom of the fire. There's a steel grate down there that allows the air to flow from these copper pipes into the furnace or the fire, and obviously you're feeding the fire through here. I was just trying, I did skin a few logs partially to see what would happen, and I see these ones right here did check more than the other ones. I mean, I don't really like the look of it versus down here. I like the look of this sort of stuff, more natural. These look like I don't know, milled lumber almost. So I will probably tend to keep my construction like this because it didn't really have any problems. I didn't see any major problems with having logs left just unskinned. And the floor, it's dirt, as you can see. The only problem with dirt floor is that plants do grow on it really well, like this little guy right here. And you just have to pull them out. And for the first year or two, you get little plants growing on your floor, because even though you can rake it through, clean it up, there's always seeds somewhere. But it's a very simple floor, and my way of keeping the draft out was to throw in cedar kickboards underneath it. You can see here and there, just to take up the distance between the second log there. And they get replaced whenever they rot, which after 4 years didn't happen. Well, the cabin, obviously, the roof kept everything fairly dry, but it was affordable. In construction, biggest cost was this, and I probably should have made it more of natural rock. I started off at the bottom doing natural rock, but failed to follow through with it just because of the amount of workload. But it works well. It doesn't get hot enough in this flue to actually have a problem with that joist, whatever it's called up there, roof runner. But for the top cap, for the flue, I simply used another patio stone, maybe a 16-inch or a 12-inch by 12-inch with a rock underneath it, put an angle on it. The flashing at the very top on the ridge is zinc, because I am in a rainforest and get a lot of rain, and if I didn't do that, I'd get a lot of moss without that zinc strip. But yeah, you can see this poly, I've replaced it once just because of the bear, but it seems to be pretty good. It's pretty easy to nail on. The whole cabin could have easily been built in maybe 25 hours, I think, if the trees fell properly. Just one man doing it. Most of the work is probably in the roof, because you have to shingle a stump, not a stump, but you have to shingle a tree to do this, and shingling takes a little bit of time. Throwing up the walls takes a lot of brute strength, but the biggest one I had was maybe 12 inches in diameter. That would be the very bottom one. And this particular cabin I built from the biggest logs to the smallest, roughly. And going up based on, I would do an elevation check every set of logs, every set of 4, and see which corner was the lowest, and then adjust by putting different sized logs on to compensate until eventually the whole cabin was roughly flat. I used a laser level, you know, a $10 laser level from like a Home Depot, yeah. The cedar shingles are supposed to outlast the hemlock just because they are more durable wood, and we'll see how that turns out. I figure this cabin's good for 20 years if nothing goes seriously wrong, like big limb from that tree doesn't fall on it, which, look at that thing. It's got 100 limbs waiting to eventually fall in the next 50 years.